Be good. Thank you very much, Alvin.
Okay, thank you for inviting me for the talks. And I want to talk again about imaging of the sun. Also my background, briefly, I'm coming originally from Austria, have a nice Austrian accent, and I'm working now as psychiatrist in Whangarei with Maori Mental Health and Addiction Services since 2014, and before I was 5.5 years in Gisborne. And I also joined the society in Gisborne, the Rassens, and also joined our society here in 2017. The time is flowing, it's about 4 years. And I also do have a small club with my friends, the Southern Stars Observers. And I always developed a little bit of passion for solar imaging and started with it about 2009. When I look back now how I did it, and now it's a big difference. It's always learning new things, also learning new techniques, and having also different tools of solar imaging, and I also want to introduce some of them today. So yes, in order to image the sun, of course, you need to see the sun, so you need to have clear skies, and that's especially also in Northland a challenge. I will also talk about seeing, because high clouds can be also quite bad sometimes for solar imaging and make the images grainy. So that, and yes, what I talk about imaging of the sun is a star. Then I talk, the sun is quite interesting. It changes always every time. So every day, for example, 2 days ago there was no prominence. Yesterday was a big prominence, for example, yes. So, and sunspots, they're moving around, so within 1 week, they change as well. And then I talk about tools for solar imaging, what I have now as equipment. And glad also Andrew is here. There's a lot from Astro NZ as well. And then a process of imaging, I may show it with I showed the workflow. I showed it similar one several years ago, but I think I repeated again the workflow. And then what I can image in white light, what I can image in hydrogen alpha and in calcium K, and also go more in detail about the mounts I use now, the Herschel wedge and the mounts, introduce a new mount, and also have the Daystar quark using it. And the challenge is now, because there's a difference between the imaging of the disk, solar disk, it's easier, you may not always need a mount, but when you go in detail on bigger scopes, you need a very good mount, yes. And then I also show images across the field of solar imaging to see which structures are about flares and prominences, and the most recent images, yes. Okay, so the sun, a little bit an introduction about sort of theory and background. So the sun is the only star we can image. It's good to have at least one star to image. And the light has different spectrums from the blue wavelengths, also UV, calcium K, and then to the hydrogen alpha and infrared. And that was discovered by Fraunhofer in this Fraunhofer lines. And with special filter, we can work out different wavelengths. And that we can also get filters of it and then can image it now. There's a lot of great technology at the moment. So most popular are for white light, the Baader filters, Mylar glass filter, and the Herschel wedge I will show today. And that's for the visible light, about 540 nanometer. Then the hydrogen alpha filter, that's the most popular one, and that's the one you see best, the chromosphere, the active zone, and the prominences. And also different brands, the Landkorn, the Daystar quark. That's not the most accessible one we have now. And my favorite, still my favorite, is the calcium K filter, 394 nanometer. Yes, that's exactly the absorption lines of the photosphere, the spectrum, as you see here. From the calcium K, I use the calcium K2 line, then to the visible light as a 540, where the Herschel wedge is, and then the hydrogen alpha is in that one, 6300. There are also other lines used as filter. the sodium line and also the magnesium line available by Daystar filters as well. That's a more specific area for not so common used, but this white light, calcium K, and hydrogen alpha, that's are the common filters there. And that's more in detail how it looks like. The differences of, that's the white light BADA, calcium K, this purplish blue color, it's just in the beginning of the visibility of the light. It's not so good for visual observing, but for imaging, very good. And then you have the hydrogen alpha, the most common one. It's about 650 nanometer here, the spectrum. The calcium K line shows more the lower chromosphere, whereas the hydrogen alpha line, the higher as well. So, but yeah, in the temperature, I mean lower temperature, yes. So, and there's the K2 line we use, but BADA has also, I think, a K1 line, what's better for visible imaging, but you don't see so good the structures of the sunspots. And yes, a little bit what's going on inside the sun. Yes, it's a nuclear reactor at the end. Thanks to this, with nuclear fusion, we get our energy, the light, the photons, and also the activities via the solar storm, solar wind, what creates the space weather, very important, because a big solar storm can affect electricity, can affect also GPS, and much more, especially in the 21st century. And it takes ages till the light gets out from the inner core to the outer core, can take several 100,000 years. And in the inside of the sun, it's about 50 million degrees. It's quite hot, yes. And that's a principle how a star works. And we can image all the zones of the we image the photosphere and the chromosphere mainly, also the convection cells, the granulation, and then here's the chromosphere, the active zone. I'll show a little bit. Here, that's the structures we see. We can photograph, of course, the core knot, of course. We can honor the prominences, that's very popular. Then the spiculae and the granulation we can photograph. Then the sunspots, active magnetic condensed energy, can then explode, and that gets to a flare. And of course, we photograph also the corona, but the corona can be only really visible at solar eclipses. Yeah. And so in the temperature, it's known that the corona is much hotter than so the surface, and that's almost paradox than the chromosphere. I think that has some reason with microspicules, they are heating that up, so far I know now. And the Parker Solar Probe is hopefully finding that out and is going to. Yes, so that's the structures what we photograph. So the sunspot is a cool, dark area, and its twists is so, and that gets so blocked up that it looks cooler because it's so blocked. And then it starts possibly get so condensed in energy that it's so, we can say it sort of explodes, and then it gets a flare. Also. And prominences can be also getting out from there's plasma, and they travel along magnetic loops. The filaments is in principle also prominence, only you see it across the sun in a different, so brighter, whereas also darker, yes. And whereas the prominence is quite bright, like red, also, and the filament is darker, yes, also contrasts. And here's some sample images there. You can image that all very good today, especially thanks to the Daystar technology, but also with Barlow and big solar telescopes. And the Earth is very small in comparison to the sun, and it can easily fit into the sunspot there. So, and the flares, they are extreme heated gas, and we measure the flares, as spaceweather.com measures it to see and follow that up, because we're getting again to a maximum, and the flares may be getting more often, and that creates a solar wind, solar storm, and it can create the aurora or much more as well. So, yes, this is the structure of a sunspot, with the umbra, the penumbra, and then the granulation around it. And before the sunspot develops, it's as we see so-called pores there across the sun. That's best, from my point of view, best visible in calcium K, but both good visible, also in white light as well, and in hydrogen alpha. That's spikelets. It's sort of heated plasma over the ongoing goes out, and that possibly make contribution to the heating of the corona. So that's a photo of high-resolution photo of spikelets. You can see that also with the day star, and the higher resolution you get the spikelets as well. If you have good tracking and good seeing, that's the main thing. So that's also, there are different types of spikelets. So sort of a longer moving one and a more quick jet-like one. And that's energized by magnetic reconnection, and that could contribute to the heating of the corona, likely. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask. Yes. So that's the structures summarized from the prominence, spikelets, chromosphere, and the flare, the granulation, and the sunspots. And that's what we can image in the sun. So here are some. There are also two types of prominences, a quiet one lasting quite long, and a sort of quick one, jet prominences, who can be there for one day and they are gone. So there are different types of prominences from a surge spray. Loop prominences are quite popular because they try to reconnect different magnetic charges, plus minus, they try to reconnect. So they're building a loop, or there's a tornado, hedge growth, or tree prominences. So the what we can see also depends on the sunspot cycle. We have maximas and minimas. In the minimum, there was now 1920. We're getting now out of the minimum, the cycle 25. In the minimum, you almost see not many sunspots. The sunspot number is quite low, so in the single digits. Whereas in the maximum can go up till 150, and good cycles up to 200 is in the measurement. That's the mean sunspot number of a day, yes, of a year. And good days you can have sometimes 46 or something, numbers of 50, 60, yes. In average at the moment they are around between 10 and 20, but it will pick up in the 24 and 2025 we're getting to another maximum. Still not clear, will it be a stronger cycle or a weaker cycle than the other one? They are both ways at the moment. So watch and see.
So is that sunspot number per year, or is it per, you've got 50, say?
Yeah, it's the average number per year, yes.
50.
But it's the average, it's the mean number, yes. So, and here, that's the solar irradiance, of course, that also varies with the cycles. So when you have more irradiance in the maxima than in the minimum, and you see here, we're heading 20, now it should go up again. Yes. And now we're coming to the praxis. That was a little bit of theoretical introduction. That's the tools of the solar imaging. As I say, I have here my LANT 60. That's a normal telescope, and here put in a calcium K filter. That's the calcium K. It's from LUNT, it's a blocking filter B1200, and I must say very robust, works fantastic, get great images. For bigger scopes beyond 100 millimeter, so only refractors can be used, you get the bigger blocking filter as well. And yeah. So that's the calcium K. So I show now the Herschel wedge. Then for the white light, I have now recently bought a Herschel wedge. That's a prisma, what is refracting about 98% of the light. And that's, you see here, that's hot there, or 99%, sorry, from the light what's making it hot here. And then you can see much better contrast of the photosphere. So that's put in normal, like the calcium K. But you need to be really careful not to touch that one, not to disassemble it. So I come to that in detail as a safety. So that is then the Herschel one. I keep that open because keep that there. So then you put in the eyepiece, and I have an image where you see how it works here. And then I have another tool. That's the Coronado Solar Max 265. I think the Society have this, the new one, the 75, yeah.
I think so. We do have a solar scope.
Yeah, yes. So far I know you have the 75, the newer one. So that, but I'm quite happy with it. The 60 millimeter does the job. And here, the difference in the Etalon is that is a rich view Etalon. It reacts quicker than the other ones. I show then in the next slide the other ones take longer, but the rich view goes quicker. So that's the Solar Max. So here is again the blocking filter, hydrogen alpha blocking filter inside. So yeah, so yes, and inside I have a 10 millimeter, yes, and there are different 50 millimeter or 32, and they see finer structures. The more you have the blocking filter, so that's the filter there inside, yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yes, yeah.
What size is that one?
That's a 10 millimeter, yeah. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, we can have a look.
Yes, and then you have the Etalon here. Then you can fine-tune the wavelength so that you see either more the prominences or the sunspots. And yes, but that's so. And you can also put the double stack in, so that gives you again more details. But it's darker, and I'm struggling because my eyesight is not that good, so I don't use it so often, the double stack. So yeah, so that's and then I use a video camera, imaging camera, the CW RC174mm now. Before I used the 1330M, and I showed that in the slides. It's only sort of summary. And I have a tripod and now a tracking mount. The 2 tracking mounts for the sun now. And then theoretically I can also use the camera, the Olympus pen, to make quick images, but don't do that so often anymore. So here, that's my tools. That's the Olympus camera. I have 2 now, the new one, the OM10 Mark 10 and the EP5. That's used for the solar eclipse. You use for the moon and the sun similar mounts for the sun. So when you have the disk of the moon or the sun. And that's my Alptron Skyguider Pro here. Yeah, that's my mates at the solar eclipse in La Higuera in Chile. And that's the new one, the HelioQuest here. That's the new mount. It's set it up, it does all automatically, and within 2 minutes you have it tracked to the sun and it works. But we'll also tell the quirks of it. It works only for solar disk imaging. So that's quite handy for certain purposes, especially when it comes to solar eclipses and track them. So that's, then I have the Iaptron RZ Pro. That's the most important mount. Is Andrew here? Yeah. Okay, but that's sort of that can also carry bigger telescopes as well. And for the short exposure, the Altazimuth mount is okay. So then there are other tools. The Sky Adventurer Pro I don't have, but with that one you can use it with camera and telescope. And for travel, it's better, yeah. And There's also another mount, small mount AZ GTS Skywatcher. The Freedom F for traveling good, but the tracking is not that reliable as with the Iaptron. And providers are Astro and Z Endro, and then you get Skywatcher material from Jacobs Digital or Pintel in Australia. But they have problems with the stock. You don't get the stuff. I think that mount you get possibly in 2022 again, and the other one as well. So, and they are quite geared to the Altazimuth mounts as well, as to the beginners, and that has also implications. I will tell you later. That's almost sounds funny, but looks like. Sorry, I've put the picture. Just see it's. Must go up. Sorry. Yeah. Yes. So yeah. That's the RZ Pro. Yes. And that's of course it should be go the other way around. And that's the camera here, and that's the scope. Yes. And that's the Solar Quest here. And that's how our image is with the Solar Quest, for example, as well. So yes. Now. So that's sorry. So that's the tools for when I go deeper. So I have also the Daystar, a Quark now as well. I will show as well. So that's with a 4x Apollo, and that requires a very good seeing and very good focusing and mounting and also post-processing, and that's sensitive to seeing. That's the fact, but it's very good. Pardon? Yeah.
So even in the daytime, you need good seeing.
Yeah. Yes. The high clouds can be a big menace. Yeah, and sometimes better you have it's windy, scattered clouds, and then in between there are clear patches. Sometimes can be when it's hot and thermic, it can quite muggy, and that also creates high clouds, and you see that then in the video. So, and here there are differences in the scopes. The Daystar via Astro and Z, that is tuned via temperature. So you must heat it and must put in charge it. It must be always heated, otherwise you can't see anything with the Daystar. And it takes about 6 to 7 minutes till it's in the green, and then you can watch it. Whereas Lund does it via pressure, and Coronado does it via rich view compression of, that's a compression sort of Etalon spacers, and that goes the quickest, yes. So, but from imaging, so far I know from the literature and from the colleagues, the Lund is in the imaging possibly superior than to the Meade, to the Coronado or Meade, yes. Here, that's the Daystar here. Put in on a 80 millimeter Apo refractor, yes, and with the AZ Pro mount. And you see the camera here, that's the temperature tuner, and here it's the knob for the energy, yes, for the temperature. If it's in red, you can't see much. So that's here, that's the Coronado SolarMax I've shown at first. It's focal length 400 millimeter, I think is f6.3, so far I'm aware, BF10. That's the double stack. And here the calcium K filter here showed that's f8.3, and that's a little bit a challenge with the Daystar, because the Daystar has the focusing only from f3 to f8, where you get optimal focus, and that's just on the limit, yes. So,
do you get the center of the sun out of focus to the outside because of the depth?
Yeah, it's more the focus that gets sort of good. I think it should be with the hyperfocal lens not be a problem, but in the imaging you get it brighter and darker. So the limb is darker and the center is brighter. And by bad seeing it can be more extreme as well, and that is a problem with processing and also, and when it's not good tracking as well, so when it goes away. So that's the calcium K filter. And above 100 millimeter telescope, you need a sort of ERF, energy rejection filter, so to filter out the stray UV and infrared energy. And all scopes you have to use refractors, also inclusive the Herschel wedge. This is quite strict. So that's the calcium K filter I have explained. That's the calcium 2 line here from Land, yes. And that's the only available. Land is the only provider of calcium K filter at the moment. Before, they had also provided that scope here. That was the last one I got in 2013. But now you get only the filter, and you can put it on any refractor up to 100 millimeter, that B1200. But I have a mate who has a B1800 and put it on a 150 millimeter refractor. So that's my camera. Monochrome video camera, quite a good resolution, 2.35 megapixel. So I'm quite happy with it, yes. And I can see the solar disk with all my both scopes and not needing to do a mosaic. So that's how it looks like, my equipment. Yeah, that was in Foxton Beach, astrophotography seminar, a computer, the cover, and then the scope with the imaging camera and focusing. Now a little bit more. That's my old camera. So that's the Mylar glass filter I use still, used before. That is also quite good. And then for solar eclipses, that camera with the telelens, 100 to 300 millimeter to get, yes, and with a Mylar filter for the partial phases and annular phases. And before the mounting, I used the sturdy tripod. For short exposures, it's okay, but if you want to do more, you need a mount. And it's also much easier to handle the focusing, whereas with the tripod, you need it to focus quick because it goes out of the frame. So it's much easier to have a mount, as I mentioned. So that's the Hercules Herschel wedge I've shown at first. And inside is a neutral density 3.0 filter. You shouldn't touch it. And then in addition, I use a Baader Continuum filter 540 millimeter. That's that one. That's the Continuum filter. So and that gives much more contrast. And if with a color camera, it would come out green. Therefore, you see the photos with the Herschel wedge in green. So, and this is the Herschel wedge I have here. So that's the Herschel wedge. So, and here there's a prism in it, what is reflecting the light is inside, and the neutral density filter. That's fixed built-in. If you shouldn't touch it, otherwise it may gets unsafe to watch. And never touch that one. And always that when you have that filter on, you need always keep an eye on it, not that the kids coming and touching it or something. So need to be safe. So that's a little bit, but it's a good tool. I'm glad I bought it. It's not too expensive, it's about, yeah, from Land it's about $400 with delivery, with AliExpress a little bit cheaper. That's the Hercules one. Especially with Land, when you buy something, the delivery costs almost as much as the product, yes. And it takes about 4 months till you get it. So that's the problem with the US at the moment. So try to buy it maybe from Australia, so New Zealand, or from China. It goes quicker. Yeah. So that was there. It was 2 weeks from AliExpress. And here, that's all what I have together. And then here you see the setup, how it works. It was just a little bit of sunny spell, and you see that spot here, that light, that refracted light from the prism here. And that you should not touch, and yeah, keep it as it is. And that was a small mount, a Skywatcher mount. So, and it gives really good contrast. I will show you an image later, I guess. So that's the Daystar quark. I have it not with me. I should have taken it with me. Sorry, but that's the Daystar quark hydrogen alpha chromosphere. There are two types. The prominence is in the chromosphere. The chromosphere is the more common one because you may see also the structure of the sun, of the solar disk as well. And here you see that's the knob, the tuning knob, also for the temperature. And here, that's the heater here. And you can use any charger for that, or the provided batteries from Daystar. And the problem is if you want to tune and change the contrast, it takes about 6-7 minutes till you see something. So it takes a little bit time and needs patience, but it's very good. You can put it on every refractor, and you see much more details, especially of the prominences. So that's the common use now of the Daystar quark. And then the Solar Quest mount, I tried to use it with the Daystar quark, and I got a little bit, no, it's not a surprise. At the end, it's logical, because the Solar Quest mount is here, is you set it up in 2 minutes. It's set up. You put it on, you don't do anything, you only put the power button in, and then it automatically levels. It has a GPS of the sun inside, and then gets to the sun, and there's a guider there. This is the guider here. Here's the guider. That's the guider here. It's a sensor that reacts to sunlight. That one, that's the sensor. And therefore, it tracks accurately the sun. It's like a guiding. It doesn't work so well when you have too many clouds, then it drifts away. But that's the principle of it. And with the Daystar, when you have big magnification, 4 times Barlow, as soon as you try to move the sun to the structure where the prominence is, but it doesn't stay there, it goes back to that original position. So it's not, can't use it with the Daystar quark. But I think with the Daystar 60 telescope or 80 telescope, you will be okay. Also for solar disk imaging, for public viewings, and or tracking eclipses for beginner, it's good. And then there was, I think, should tell that quirk as well. So a bit the Skywatcher, yes. You shake only the heads about this company sometimes, because in New Zealand and Australia you get that mount only fixed assemble with a white light scope, also with a filter scope, and that's fixed, screwed in between the sensor and the dovetail, so you can't remove it. I couldn't believe it. I should have read it when I bought it, but it's unbelievable, yes. And it costs about $700, and you can only then use that scope, the white scope, and then you don't see much in a solar minimum with the white light scope. There's no sunspots, so barely then. And so luckily I had my friend Tony Quark, who had to disassemble the whole mount, everything, and then I found the screw on the top of the motor aligned and screwed it out. And there was also I think it was also imperial format as well. So really safe for the beginner that you can't do anything. It's crazy, yes. Yes, so now luckily Tony could sort that out, so I can use it now. So that's for the other scopes, and maximum 4 kilo, not more. And then the balancing can be tricky as well. Because you need to guess it. You can't really balance it in the position, because it's all automatic. You're not allowed to change it. As soon as you put the power button, it goes back to that position, but you can't balance as others, so you must guess it. That's also a drawback a little bit. And you can get the solar mount via Lund in the UK. The Lund, I think you may have to wait some time, yes. Yes, that's. And here are the cursor buttons here. There are the buttons here. So, and then when you want to have it quicker, you do the power button, and then you change the cursor. So now I have put it on. So, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yes. It may search the sun, I don't know. So, but Yes, I'll switch it off. So that's then the position it goes, but I'll switch it off now. Oh, doesn't let it. It's all automatic. Yeah, I must, hopefully you don't mind, it may make a noise or something. I don't know what it does when it doesn't find the sun. So it's all, yeah, automatic, but it's good for certain purposes. And that's, so now I'm ready for imaging. So that's the gear what I have here, the Daystar, the charger here, and then the mount, and here that APO refractor, and here the Daystar, and yeah, charged here. That's the Barlow here, and that's the package of the Daystar. And here, that's in Foxton Beach, when I tried it the first time, the Daystar, and bought it from Andrew. Yeah, that was the best seeing I had. And here there's the Heliofind, or the mount, yes. I'll try once more. Yet. So, conditions. Now we come to the seeing. You spoke about seeing, okay. That's important to have the right quality of the equipment. And optimal focusing is important. And then also processing skills in time and patience. And that's how I process it. I come to that working steps, go over it. So that's the seeing. Atmospheric conditions are important. 4Ks, sunrise or sunset, it's also more hazy. You have worse seeing. Also that wet grass that can also influence the seeing. And interesting, and of course poor mounting, vibration, that all plays a role. And the optical quality as well. And the processing. So that's sharpened, and that's not sharpened. I use AutoStacker then with the sharpening tool. Mostly it works. And also the turbulences of the telescope, especially when it's heating up and you have the telescope long in the sun as well. That can also influence the seeing. And an old hydrogen alpha telescope, like one of my friends, I need an IR filter to get it focused as well. That was the 90 millimeter one of Neil. So, yeah, so that's average seeing, not 100% clear and sharp, and that's when it's better seeing, yes. And here, yeah, Plagueis and the tiny sunspot. So that's how I process it, yes, as I use fire capture, AutoStacker, Photoshop then, and I make a composite between the overexposed prominences and the normal exposed disk. And then I merge the layers afterwards. And the same I do in hydrogen alpha, but often I combine it with the sort of overcolored red, then it shows the prominences more and more contrast and gets sharper. Depends on the seeing and on the situation. So that's the working process. I use fire capture, then AutoStacker here. I do either 50% or 100%. 100% has an advantage, it has less noise, and I've seen the quality is not so much worse. So rather I choose then, because often have not so many images, depends when it's in between clouds. So then about, ideal should be about 1,500-600 frames would be good. So that's how I open it. As I get the best image is opening, then I crop it, then I zoom it in, and yes, I save it as TIFF. And I do it as RGB color that I can color it, false color, calcium K, blue and purple, hydrogen alpha more orange, yellow. So, and then I do sometimes use more sharpen when it's not so sharp, especially in bad seeing. And then also play around with the noise reduction. It's like to balance out because, yes, to find the right combination, yes. And that's a comparison when I did it with and without sharpen tool. There's a little bit of difference. And yeah. But with sharpening, it can get more noisy. Again, to have that balanced out and can get pixelated. So then use the second images, copy it again, the prominence here, and then, yeah, that's Magic Wand tool. Before, at my last talk, mostly I could do the Magic Wand tool. Now, for any reason, doesn't work. I think it depends on the seeing. It's more high clouds. Maybe the haze from the Australian bushfire from 20 still there. Friend has argued. And then I select inverse. That's the best one, but I have to use the magnetic lasso. And when there are artifacts, use the fill content aware tool, then I can remove the artifacts as well. So that's then.
The newer version.
I have the new version, the CC.
The newer ones have got something called select subject, which is a fairly good automatic tool, which would
Sorry?
they have new selection tools. They have select subject, which automatically tries to find the background out, and it does a pretty good job, so it's worth giving that a go.
That would be nice to. I didn't see that select subject. Where to find it in the? Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
How long are the video images you're taking?
The image is about exposure, but 10, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, depends, yes. And sometimes there's a quirk when the computer is full in the disk, although you do 17 seconds and you have only 100 megabytes. So you must have emptied the disk so that you have enough space that you get the.
You get a rotation of the sun or something?
Yeah, the field rotation, I think, I don't never go above 25, 30 seconds. So it should be, with the outside mount, not the problem. But again, for when the image with bigger, the EQ mount is, of course, the best one, yeah, especially with bigger telescopes, yes. So then copy the disk and then paste that disk into the overexposed one, and then with free transform, yes, get it lined up. With the Magic Wand tool, very good. Magnetic lasso, the CC, the new photo version is worse than the other one. So we'll try that out. Selection, new selection tool, yeah. So, and then I adjust brightness and contrast and color it. And then play around, do it invert, so that's often. So, and then I try to rotate it against the SDO, so then I adjust it, yes, against the SDO. And then I post it in the groups, also now in the solar activity group as well. So that's the finished image, yes, with the prominences in the disk. Not many do prominences in Calcium K, but I think I see them quite well, so do it, and yeah. So that's the inverted version. So now white light imaging, now that's sort of the last 10 minutes. See what is possible with the imaging. It's more the photos I do. You can see as a sunspot, faculae, and granular, solar eclipses, see optical phenomena like halos. You can see the auroras, the so-called night sun, and the transits as well. And that's my tools, in addition also to the Herschel one. Doesn't stop. I hope, yeah, so it stopped now. So that's a white light image with a 10-inch telescope with a pretty clear, good contrast. You see sunspots in the faculae, but it's a little bit too much noise reduction, I think, but yeah, it's difficult. So that's mine, is similar with, but only 60 millimeter telescope, so a refractor. That was with the Mylar glass filter, it was years ago, and that is now what I did with the Herschel wedge. It's much sharper, finer. You see the structure of the sunspot. Of course, they're getting hopefully bigger, yeah. You see the umbra and also the penumbra. Not so much faculae at the moment. There's also a small spot there. So that was with the Herschel wedge done, and I colored it green, so as it should be. And that's a little bit, then I used the Barlow lens with the Herschel wedge, and looks a little bit more in detail, the sunspot here. And also you see well the granulation as well. And that's from that big sunspot 2822. And here, that's a detailed image of the, cropped image of the sunspot in white light. Yes, you can see also white light without filter, very rare. You must have a haze, also from wildfires like in the US after the solar eclipse ahead in Redmond, then you can see it like that. But it's not to practice normally here. So that's the transit of the Venus in white light, wonderful. And this annular eclipse comes out well in white light as well. And then the iridescence, and just after the lunar eclipse in Nepal, it meant to be a bird just crossing the iridescence of the sun. It's amazing. And that's also a reflection of the ice crystals and droplets of the clouds, and they're making this color. So that's a solar halo. It's a similar phenomena, but it's more in 20 degrees distance. And they have this almost rainbow color here around. And that is only possible with cirrus clouds. And that's another phenomenon, the circumsolar arc as well. And here, the night sun, the aurora that was on a flight from San Francisco to Frankfurt via Labrador. And that was in Gisborne, the big aurora in 2013 could see and image. And in our latitudes, in lower latitudes, middle latitudes, you have mainly red auroras. I think it has to do with the oxygen, with the excitement of the oxygen. So that's total solar eclipse is also part of white light imaging. I think several years ago, I talked about it. Yes, that feels a complete talk, the techniques, what you can do, which kind of eclipses you have, how to photograph them, what to plan. So that was in Chile, La Higuera. That was just before the demonstration started, and then just half a year before the pandemic started. So, quite lucky. So that's the chromosphere. What you can observe is hydrogen alpha. And image. The plague is a beta with calcium K. Filaments here, they are dark, whereas the prominences are brighter. But that's specific for hydrogen alpha. The filaments you don't see well in calcium K. Sunspot you can see is better in calcium K, and the prominences are very good in hydrogen alpha as well. So that's once more in detail, and the spikelets you may also see, especially with bigger scopes and magnification. So that's the Venus transit I got, but I had different technique then. I only put the camera on the solar scope. Was not so sophisticated as now, but it's learning, but still was an amazing event. So that's the annular eclipse I saw in hydrogen alpha in 2012, Glen Canyon. And that's now a big prominence. That's the biggest I've ever imaged, yes. That was January 2016. It's a very big prominence. They are often quiet prominences lasting quite long. And that's, you can color this black, so you get the prominences better out, so, for example. And that's with Niels scope from 90 millimeter double stack. You see a lot of detail, much more the spicules and the sunspots and the filaments, the prominences. And had to use the IR-cut filter. Similar stuff you could see with the Daystar as well. So that was the inverted version. And so that's the Daystar quark inverted. So here, that was in Foxton Beach, the prominences. And here, the sunspot here, of course, that's the sunspot. And then the filaments and the spiculae. So that was the most recent Daystar quark image, what I did yesterday. And here you see the sunspot and the detached prominence here. And here you have to combine it. You can't do it in one image. You have to combine the disk.
You said it was yesterday.
Pardon?
You said it was yesterday.
Yesterday, yes.
You've got the year wrong.
What? The year, sorry. Oh, God. Sorry. Yeah, it was yesterday, sorry. Yeah. Yes, I must. And that's the inverted version. Yeah. Yes. And that was a big filament at the 14th of November, 15. That's the biggest filament I've ever seen, imaged. There possibly were bigger ones. And that's the filament goes direct into the prominence. And that's inverted. I think the inverted version looks good here. It's like a 3D effect. So, and then a little bit about sunspots. So that's the sunspots here during the solar maximum with a nice filament. Looks like a little bit a smiley face, huh? A little bit, yes, with some ears and smiley, yes. So-called pareidolia. So then that's a 2 times Barlow sunspot, and the flares. That's the flares. And here, transit of the airplane, lucky. So that's other transits of birds and ISS. And that was the recent one with the big sunspots, what we had now. The right date here. So give me 5 minutes, hopefully. Yes. So that's a sunspot here in detail, also with Barlow in hydrogen alpha. And that's what does the calcium K line. It's great, needs longer exposures, but you see better the sunspots in the plaques. And also the so-called calcium K grains. And here, that's the structures what we have in calcium K prominences, microflares or element bonds, plages, pores, and the granulation. So that's the difference to hydrogen alpha and calcium K. And here, that was a partial phase of the eclipse, 2017. And then there was very big prominences also in calcium K and nice sunspots. That's inverted. Inverted comes more 3D out. It looks often more artistic, yeah? And that's a solar minimum sun as we saw in the last years, starting end of 2018, 19, 20. A little bit prominences on barely plagues. So that was, I tried it. It was cloudy, bad seeing, and then I saw it's not so bad, and there was a big prominences here. Looks like a snowman, huh? With the eyes, and the prominences is about twice, very big, twice as the diameter of the Jupiter, and that's the Earth. So you can see the magnitudes. And that's inverted. And that was again 2 days ago. And that's with Barlow a little bit magnified with the Barlow. Here the nice umbra, penumbra, and a lot of plages, but not really microflares, yes. So that's a little bit cropped in. So, and that's with the solar quest from yesterday. And here was surprised the prominences here. Was not here then. Was here only there, and then suddenly you have that big prominences here. And that's inverted. And here, yeah, some birds came crossing also the calcium K sun. There's a tui, I learned it from, yeah. It looks like, some people say it looks like a fish, but anyway. That's inverted. So that's some transit, the Mercury transit, composite, inverted, and then ISS transit. That was last year, that was 2020, inverted. So, and here, that is the end of my talk. Any questions before it's too late?
Are you aware of anyone doing any, trying to use the combined images, the hydrogen alpha and the calcium images at the same time to...
I do it some.
To do bring them overlay so you can get both kinds of detail together. Does it work?
I think Raymond did it once. I didn't try it, but what I tried is I did sometimes the hybrid one. That means when I had no prominences in calcium K and then hydrogen alpha, I combined the prominences of hydrogen alpha and calcium K, and then you must rotate it right with the position. That's also tricky. But
I wonder if you could, if combined disk images, if you could take them both at the same time, then combined disk images might give you a really overview of what's going on both those at once.
Okay.
Whether it work or not, I don't know.
May have to experiment something new. Good. Yeah. Okay, that's everything. Thank you for.
Oh, thank you very much.
Good, yeah.